Welcome to today's Menopause Monday. So I'm talking about COVID and menopause and the link between possible long COVID and women who are going through the menopause and postmenopausal. Now, I think we all know by now that men tend to be more susceptible to dying from COVID-19 or in fact developing serious complications. But there's also been some evidence to show that menopausal and postmenopausal women have a higher propensity to develop long COVID or to actually have more serious symptoms and to show more symptoms of COVID-19. Now, having literally just recovered from COVID-19 myself, I came out of isolation 2 or 3 days ago, finally. Isolation was harder than I thought it was going to be. And I'm an introvert. I'm an INFJ, if you've ever done the Myers-Briggs. And while, on social media, I love helping people. That's what is my driving force. Personally, privately, I'm quite a quiet individual. But I really, the last few days of isolation were hard. I extended my isolation because I had symptoms still. And the guidelines say that 10 days of isolation if you are asymptomatic, so you've not got symptoms, extend it by a further 4 or 5 days if you have got symptoms. And I still feel like I've got it in my head a little bit. I still can't taste very much. I still can't smell very much. And I'm playing that game of, can I do this without feeling yucky afterwards? So I'm just moving back into my exercise regime in a very gentle way. So I just want to, because it was so pertinent to me and my experience of COVID, having been, I'm now postmenopausal, I'm 51. I just wanted to share my experience and also the information that I found, the various studies that I've been reading that actually are giving us some really, really interesting information about long COVID and being a menopausal woman. So I am going to share that with you today. There was a study in between March and November 2020 where over 1,000 participants were analysed, the National Health for Research study, this was, and it showed that menopausal women who had been released from hospital, having had a coronavirus infection, had still got lingering symptoms like exhaustion and brain fog and memory issues a good 5 months after they'd been released. Now, it's quite interesting. A lot of these studies are pointing to the effect that estrogen has on our immune system. So it actually boosts the immune system. But in women, we also have a prevalence of autoimmune diseases. So out of all the autoimmune cases around the world, 80% of those are carried by women. And there's a body that is, there's a theory that is possibly because we've had coronavirus, because our immune system has been stimulated, is it being overly stimulated? And have we almost got like the vestiges or the sort of hangover of an autoimmune disease while our body finally comes to terms with the fact that we've had coronavirus? So, is there some evidence that's linking to the fact that we are lacking in estrogen because we're postmenopausal or our estrogen levels are falling during that menopausal year? And that could be having an interesting response or an interesting reason as to why you might be feeling like we've got symptoms of long COVID. Also, the symptoms of long COVID are actually quite similar to menopausal symptoms. So it can be really difficult to actually define, is it your menopausal symptoms that are causing these problems, or is it in fact long COVID? So I'm going to share some of the specific symptoms that you get with long COVID and some of the specific symptoms that you get with menopause. You're also going to see there's an overlap with quite a few of those. But hang on in here, because there's a study I'm going to share with you in a few moments run by the King's College and in London. And it's absolutely fascinating. If estrogen is a defining factor, then you would imagine that women on HRT, obviously boosting their estrogen levels that they would normally not have as they've gone through the menopause, actually don't fare as well as you would think they would. So I'm first of all going to go over the symptoms of long COVID and the symptoms of menopause, show the similarities, highlight the differences, and then we'll dive into that King's College study that is actually really, really, really revealing. It was a large study. It was just around about 600,000 women were part and parcel of that study. There's a real paradox that shows up as a result of that study. So yeah, hang on in there for that one, because I think it's absolutely fascinating. So I have got a list in front of me because I have got brain fog, like on steroids. It's probably menopausal. It's probably a little bit recovering from COVID. And I had a thought earlier, and literally within a split second, I'd completely forgotten what that thought was. I did remember what I thought about 3 hours ago, just a few minutes ago. It's weird how that happens. So I've actually got a list because I don't think I'll actually remember them all. And I want to be really specific about the symptoms of long COVID and the symptoms of menopause. So long COVID, extreme fatigue made worse by exertion. Now, I think we can all say safely as we go through the menopause that we get that fatigue. It's almost like this cloud that kind of weighs you down. However, I think it's fair to say that unless you have adrenal fatigue, which I think you're also more susceptible of as during the menopause because of the our adrenal glands support our ovaries. So when our ovaries go into retirement, just quickly to explain that, our adrenals help to back up the job of the ovaries. So if our adrenals are already tired through just living a life that's stressful, that can include lack of sleep stress, like not eating the right food stress, lack of movement stress, dehydration stress, family dynamic changing stress, looking after elderly parents stress, etc., etc., etc. It means that our adrenal health is already stressed. And so there are a lot of people that are sort of borderline adrenal fatigue. If you are on that, if you are part of adrenal fatigue syndrome, the best thing to do is rest. Take a few days off work and literally get into bed and allow your body 100% to rest. Just do nothing except for eat healthy, drink lots of water, and sleep. So with long COVID, you can get the extreme fatigue, but generally with menopause, exertion would not exacerbate that. So long COVID, extreme fatigue made worse by when you do something. I suppose it's like when we're ill. I've had the flu 3 times, proper flu, and even just having a shower was just like, had to go and lie down after having a shower, even just to get up and brush your teeth. And it's just like, then you have to get back into bed. That's that kind of exertion that I'm referring to. Next one is brain fog and an inability to concentrate. Well, I think we all know as menopausal women, brain fog is a major, major issue. Feeling breathless with a cough, obviously that is a COVID symptom. It's not a menopausal issue. Chest pain and palpitations, really it's a sign of long COVID. It's not a sign of menopause. However, if you're feeling more anxious through the menopause, and I know for me, when I was in the menopause, had that menopausal year, and that's sort of like going from perimenopause, and then you have the 12 months before you have the 12 months that signifies the day since your last period. So you're only menopausal for 1 day. The rest is postmenopause. You're either premenopause, which is before perimenopause kicks in, perimenopause when your hormones are all over the shop and you're moving into menopause. Menopause is 1 day, and then you're postmenopausal. So when I was going through that, I would suddenly wake up at night and I felt anxious. Now, if you have panic attacks, you're going to have those palpitations. And when we're going through the menopause, our progesterone also falls off. Well, our progesterone is our calming hormone. So you might find that because you're feeling more anxious, it could be palpitations that you're getting as a result of menopause, long COVID. It could be. So again, that's a fairly grey area. So long COVID, headaches, pins and needles, insomnia. Headaches, we all know you can get those in the menopause. Insomnia, I think most of us have got insomnia going through the menopause. Pins and needles, not so much. Stomach upsets, nausea and loss of appetite is a sign of long COVID. You can also get stomach upsets with the menopause because estrogen keeps the motility of our digestive system going properly. So you can start to get constipated, which can lead to bloating. I think we can get more we can get more sensitive to certain foodstuffs as well. I know I've spoken to people who can't drink dairy or eat dairy anymore since they've become menopausal. I think if we're going to develop an allergy, it could well happen during the menopause. So gastric symptoms could be long COVID. They could be menopause. I think if it suddenly comes on, it's more likely to be a long COVID associated problem. Psychological symptoms of long COVID, including depression, anxiety, well, we know that can also happen through the menopause. Musculoskeletal symptoms, joint and muscle pain. I get joint pain. I used to have much worse joint pain through the menopause. Since I cut out caffeine, it's much better. You'll find if you cut out sugar as well, that will reduce it quite significantly. But when I had joint pain when I had COVID, and it was like that fluey joint pain. My whole body ached, my skin was sensitive, and I could feel like my ribs were aching. So I think, joint pain can be worse in the morning, technically, probably with menopause. That ill joint pain that you get with long COVID, I would suggest is a different kind of joint pain. It's that drawing, exhausting kind of joint pain. So although you'd still classify it as joint pain, it's a different type of joint pain. Loss of taste and smell, known as anosmia. I've got that still at the moment. I think we don't tend to have that with menopause. That's more of a long COVID associated thing. And then phantom odors, so smelling things that are not there, known as phantosmia. That is much more of a long COVID type thing. During menopause, I think some of your tastes change. You might suddenly find that the perfume you used to love, you don't like it so much anymore, and foods and drink that you used to adore are not quite so favorite anymore. And it does have an effect on our taste buds when we go through the menopause, but not to such a degree. Like, just coming out of COVID now, I can taste some things, and I can pick up certain smells, but I haven't got that fullness back yet. And I know people who've had COVID and they still can't taste or smell a thing, and it's a long time ago since they had COVID. So I just wanted to sort of go through those. Weight gain is it's just more specific signs of the menopause, just because I think we should, as this is Menopause Monday, obviously sexual dysfunction, pelvic floor dysfunction, UTIs, urinary tract infections are much more prevalent in the menopause. But also if you're going through COVID and your immune response is not so good, that can lead to urinary tract infections. It can lead to soreness around the vagina. It can lead to soreness. I think the whole area down below can become more sensitive. Lack of libido, that it tends to be more of a menopause thing. But of course, if you've got COVID and you're not feeling very well, you're probably not going to have much of a libido either. Breast tenderness. I know I talk to a lot of people who have really serious breast tenderness. That is hormonal. That's the menopause. Weight gain. Weight gain is something that I talk to a lot of ladies about. All of a sudden, you're putting on weight around the middle. Our body fat does redistribute during the menopause. Specifically, a lot of it is cortisol related. So going back to the adrenal glands, when our adrenal glands are not in great health, or we're under constant stress, that constant cortisol that's being released makes you hang on to belly fat. We have 4 times the amount of cortisol receptors around our belly than we do in any other area of the body. So belly fat tends to signify insulin resistance. Insulin is our fat storing hormone. When cortisol, so our stress hormone, is elevated in our body, it increases the amount of insulin that gets released into our body too. So it's a dance of hormones. If you can work on stress reduction, on relaxation techniques, eating good food, exercising more, because that gobbles up stress hormones, but it of course promotes feel-good hormones as well. It's going to have a beneficial impact on weight gain, particularly around your middle. And also, we don't need to eat quite so much as we get older, because our metabolism does tend to slow down a little bit. So consider just maybe using a smaller plate or reducing your portion size a little bit. You don't need to reduce it an awful lot, but avoid the snacks and reduce your portion sizes. That's going to help you with your weight gain. If weight is an issue for you and you're really struggling to get started with a healthy routine, message me. That's what I'm ninja at. I have so many ladies in my private online fit club community who we're all a similar age. Most of us are menopausal. The system that we works incredibly well. It's not deprivation. It's not calorie counting. I could not do that, and it's not sustainable long term. So now I am going to talk about the King's College study because it's absolutely fascinating. So the study, bearing in mind, is about 600,000 women. So the study was, one group was, I think 152,000 was ladies who are postmenopausal women. And they showed increased cases of COVID. And there was a trend to more, not a huge trend, but there was a trend towards more severe complications as a result of COVID. The other group was around 298,000 off the top of my head. And these were the 18 to 45-year-olds taking the combined pill. So obviously increased. So they've got the estrogen from their own bodies and the additional estrogen coming from the combined pill. They had significantly fewer hospitalizations and less serious symptoms. Now, this is the interesting bit. Women taking HRT, so being given more estrogen than they would normally get biologically, they had higher cases of COVID-19 than women of a similar age not taking HRT. However, no increase in hospitalizations compared to women not taking HRT. So it's a real paradox because it would suggest that the younger women taking additional estrogen because of the combined pill are having more of a protective effect. Yet women who were taking extra estrogen with HRT, who are postmenopausal, actually have a higher incidence of hospitalization, higher incidence of COVID, not hospitalization, have a higher incidence of catching COVID than women their age who are not taking HRT. So there's a lot of research out there still as to why that might be happening. They are looking at possibly using estrogen as an interaction to try and boost the immune system against COVID for men and for women. But of course, if men take it, then they're going to they might start to develop female characteristics like growing breasts and feeling more emotional and possibly lack of libido or drop in libido, that sort of thing that's associated with the glory of being in a woman's body. So it's a real paradox. There is no conclusive proof, unfortunately, but it does suggest there is some link that they are further exploring with estrogen and how it affects menopausal women with their symptoms of COVID. So really, I was a bit disappointed. I was hoping there'd be more of a definite answer. It's still ongoing. However, there are still things that we can do to improve our long-term health, whether you've had COVID or not. So we know that, if you're diabetic, if you're on insulin medications, and also going through, postmenopausal, we have high risk of cancer, some types of cancers. We also tend to put on weight. These are all factors, certainly weight gain, managing our blood sugars and cutting out processed foods, managing the amount of sugars that we eat and drink. We can control those. And so whether you've had COVID or not, it is still a very wise idea to make sure that you are prioritizing your sleep, because that's when our immune system flourishes. While I've had COVID, it is one of the things I have absolutely prioritized. I make myself go to bed early. I'm in bed for about 8:30 most nights. I do read or listen to something for a little while, but there are no screens at all. And I think it's made a big difference to, certainly latterly as I've got beyond COVID. I'm starting to introduce exercise again. like I said at the beginning, sort of very gently, so I don't want to overdo it. So many people have said it comes back and bites you in the bum if you overdo it. So I'm doing 1 day off, 1 day on, 1 day off, 1 day on, and I'll just see how that goes. Must admit, the first day I did exercise, I thought, oh my goodness, my muscles just felt exhausted. But then once I started to do it, they felt stronger and I felt more alive again. So I think it's easy to get stuck in that rut of thinking, I haven't got the energy, I can't do it. I would encourage you to try gentle stuff. And if you feel exhausted or fatigued, my arms and shoulders, I was only holding myself up in like a plank while I did a stretch. And they literally felt like my muscles were popping out of my skin. But I persevered with it, and it's almost like they just needed to fire up again. And I felt much, much better afterwards. And I did another workout. And again, I'm sort of feeling stronger as a result of doing that. But I am being careful not to do a lot of cardio stuff at the moment. Obviously, look after your gut health. So many of our happy hormones are created in the gut, not in the brain. And it's really, our gut health has a massive impact on our overall immune system. It also means if we have a healthy microbiome, we're able to absorb the nutrients from the food that we eat. Eat lots of veggies, you want lots of fiber. Plant-based is certainly a healthy way to go. If you don't want to go plant-based, just make sure the biggest portion on your plate is vegetables, and ideally lots of green leafy vegetables. Sleep, lots of water, drink loads of water, half your body weight. So weigh yourself, whatever your weight is in pounds, you divide that by 2, and that's the amount of fluid ounces of water you should drink every day. So if you weigh 200 pounds, you need to drink about 100 fluid ounces of water every day. Eat clean as much as you can. Yes, enjoy a few treats, but keep them as treats, and prioritize your sleep. Start moving. We have to move our bodies. It's absolutely vital. If you have joint pain that is menopause related joint pain, most of our joints are synovial joints, which means they're in a synovial capsule. And when we move those joints, it stimulates the synovial fluid. It also keeps our bones strong, and it keeps our muscles strong and toned. And exercise also fills the powerhouses in our cells, the little mitochondria. It helps to re-energize those. So instead of thinking that exercise is going to take your energy away, it's not. It's actually going to give you energy, but it's also going to gobble up stress hormones, and it's also going to help release endorphins. And we all want more endorphins, don't we? It also helps you to sleep better. So there are things that we can take action on, whether you've got COVID or not. If you're struggling with long COVID, really focus on your sleep, really focus on your water, really focus on eating as healthily as possible. And when you can, start to incorporate gentle exercise. I think it's easy. I've spoken to a lot of people who've got long COVID. Since I've had COVID, so many people, it's been fascinating, actually. You just have to, I think, work out what is best for you. I know I love my exercise. I like working out. So I've been nudging that envelope to see how I feel. And so far, so good. Bearing in mind, I haven't done a heavy duty cardio workout yet. So it'll be interesting to see how that works. I'm not going to be doing one of those immediately either. I am going to build up gradually. But I think we do have to, at some point, start to think, right, let's incorporate some movement, whether that's walking that turns into brisk walking, that turns into walking on an incline briskly, or whether that turns into more intentional workout type movement. But go with what feels best for you, knowing that it's not an excuse, that it is you're just working within your envelope, so that you're not pushing it too hard, but you're doing enough to boost your recovery as much as you can do. And just be mindful of the fact that so many of those symptoms of long COVID are also very, very similar to menopausal symptoms, apart from the thing, like the severe nausea, the severe joint aches, the lack of taste and smell, the strange smells that you might be getting that actually don't exist. The cough, the persistent cough, those types of things are COVID related. And if you've got COVID, just hang on in there, mask up and isolate. I mean, I learned a lot while I had COVID. just by the fact that you can still test positive even when you've come out of isolation. I've heard from people saying that you can test positive up to 3 months after you've actually finished your isolation. I am testing negative now, thank goodness. But if you're planning a holiday away and things like that, it can scupper that if you've got COVID. And just go easy on yourself. I'm going to keep my eye on these studies because I'm absolutely fascinated to see if estrogen can be proven to have a contributory role in us getting better from COVID. And when I find out more, I will definitely share it with you. But thanks for hanging on in there. I'm sorry it's not more conclusive, but it's really fascinating to see that paradox of HRT actually hasn't really made any difference to those women at all. However, people on the combined pill, bearing in mind they're younger, so the chances that, they don't get COVID, as younger people tend not to have COVID as much as older people. But, those ladies who are taking the HRT compared to women who of a similar age who don't take HRT had a higher incidence of COVID, but not more in hospitalization. So they were getting COVID, but weren't being hospitalized. So that's one good thing. Yeah, interesting, isn't it? It's absolutely fascinating. So I will keep you posted on that. Thanks for hanging with me. If you found this helpful, please give me a thumbs up or click the heart or subscribe. If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe to my channel so you don't miss future Menopause Monday sessions. And if you've got anything you want me to cover in future episodes, send me a message. I'll be more than happy to do that. And just stay safe. Keep that mask on. Keep washing your hands because it's still out there. I am a reclusive person pretty much, and I have no idea how I caught it. I'm super careful, and that was the irony. Out of everyone I know, I probably go out the least, and I'm the most careful when I do. And I caught the blooming thing. So it is out there. It's lurking. So be careful, be safe, and thank you for your time.